Hey, afternoon, Dr. Alan Christensen here with you and back for Office Hours Live. Happy to get to connect. So, welcome. Just did a group session for some Q&As earlier today. Got tons and tons of good questions from that, and I'll look at a couple of those. But happy to see you guys here with me live as well. Bunch of people jumping on already. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see everyone. And yeah, it's fun to connect. It's been boy a month and a half of the whole shelter in place now, and missing people. Uh, yeah, many are coming on already. Good to see you guys. Welcome, welcome, Melody, and seeing some familiar names already. And uh, come on and give me some good questions. I'll take whatever I can in the first portion and go deep with those. Jean's here with us. Welcome, Jean. Yeah, I'd love to get a couple questions early along that I'll do follow through and ask some other follow-up questions onto and make some good sense out of. So yeah, we've got some parts of the country opening up again pretty soon. That's a big development, probably in the coming weeks, many, many more. We've got Ramona with us, doing well in Oregon. Glad to hear that, Ramona. Glad you're doing all right. I don't know the timing for you all for reopening. I haven't, honestly, truth be told, I've been looking at some of the medical literature, but I've pretty much avoided the news the last week or more. I'll just check in on updates and numbers really quickly, but yeah, I've never really been much for the news, and I don't feel like I can ignore it, so I'm still watching it and watching the biggest developments, but it's not something that really fits well with my life or happiness and whatnot. Here's some questions coming in already. Deanna's one about carb portions of dinner. So hey, Deanna, so I'm assuming that you're on the challenge and you're asking about it in that context. And top recommendations, the ones that are going to serve you the best are the ones that have the greatest fiber diversity and the greatest resistant starch content. So we've got our daughter home with us here for a couple months, and she's upstairs cooking right now. I can't remember what she was doing for our carbs tonight. My favorites during the challenge, though, during those times, I really love focusing in on potatoes and legumes as far as the top ones. They're phenomenal foods. I saw one paper about legumes, and you always hear beans and legumes, right? So that's a misnomer. So beans come into legumes already. It's really beans plus peas equal legumes. So to say beans and legumes, like saying beans and peas. So yeah, I saw one paper looking at their effect upon longevity. It really looked at different food categories' effect upon longevity. And the most dramatic category by far was legumes. And the effect that it had became pronounced at like 15 grams per day. And that was like, I think I weighed this out. I think it was like half a dozen garbanzo beans. You don't have to eat enough beans to get miserable, but if you add in even a little bit per day, they are just life-changing. They are full of polyphenols, so many kinds of fiber, lots of great RS. And during the challenge, the ones I love the most are the white beans. So they're called white beans themselves. They're also navy, northern cannellini beans, also just awesome, awesome things. So follow up here from Deanna, is it okay to add fats to those carbs, ghee, olive oil? So Deanna, I'm not sure if you're on the challenge right now because it's a different time in life. During general times of life, for sure, healthy fat in the diet, not a problem. Think about your total fuel needs. During the challenge, I do limit that pretty closely during the whole reset process. So yeah, just per those guidelines. And in terms of types of fats, we think about what's essential, and oh, you have started the challenge. Okay, yeah, take a peek at the guidelines. So the idea there is, if there's what we want to have happen, we want your liver to regain its glycogen and break down its triglyceride. So the main thing, it's really, whenever there's a suppression of metabolism, it's really an early mild version of fatty liver syndrome. And in the case of fatty liver, your liver gets all this triglyceride, but it doesn't have enough glycogen to ignite the triglyceride. So it's kind of like matches and wood. You got this big pile of wood, but you need matches to get it going. So that's why the challenge itself has not a lot of fat because that allows you to tap into the triglyceride, but it does include some versions of carbohydrate because that helps you regain your glycogen. In terms of outside the challenge, general health, fats and carbs are both fuels, and they certainly have things to offer. There's good versions and bad versions, and it's not as critical the exact ratio of them for overall health. But during the challenge, then, yep, that's a critical thing. So Deanne, thank you, loving the reset shake. That's cool. So I'm guessing, Deanne, you're probably about, people are 2 weeks into it or so. Let me know how far you are and how it's going for you and how it's been working out. Yeah, but it's an awesome process. We've seen feedback. I just spoke to a friend who's doing a summit on blood pressure and hypertension. And we had a bunch of stories that came from the last challenge of people whose blood pressure reversed for the first time ever. So yeah, we get sick from dangers and trauma, like we fall down, or we have infections. I mean, duh, that's a big thing these days. But apart from that, most of the other ways we get chronic disease, they all tie into how our body is processing fuel and how well we can regulate our fuel supply. So when that gets better, the blood pressure improves, the cognitive function gets better, the body's cholesterol, triglycerides get better. So tons of good things change. And speaking of tons of good things, we got lots of folks jumping on right now. Welcome aboard, you guys. Good to see everyone. And yeah, happy Monday. And yeah, I've really gotten, I don't know, I'm not as down as I have been about our current situation. It's going to be changing. You know, we now have antibody testing. I did a big announcement last week. So antibody tests now are available. Your IH doc can help you. And if you've had positive antibodies, then that's a cool way that you could help others and probably also be immune yourself. We're not certain about that, but we know there can be some benefit to others from your serum. So it's a cool thing to find out about. Deanne just started Friday, 54, having trouble getting rid of weight. Yeah, Deanne, so drop on back next week and keep me posted. We've had so many great stories of those who have had this turn it around for them. And hopefully you've gotten connected in the Facebook group. The Facebook group has, I think, like almost 20,000 people who've done the challenge already. And it's an awesome group. They're right there waiting to help and support and give feedback. People that aren't even doing it right now are always there ready to help. So if anything does ever stall for you, there's probably a reason for that someone can help you sort out, and we'll make it work. So let's see how it goes for you. Okay. Hey, Dr. C, it's Kimberly. It's been a while since I've been on here. What challenge are you referring to? Oh, Kimberly, thank you so much. Yeah, I didn't do a good job explaining that at all. So this is the Metabolism Reset Challenge, and we just kicked one off about a week ago. I don't know the date for the next one, but probably within roughly a month. Take a peek at metabolismresetchallenge.com, and you'll find that. You'll find that there. But yeah, it's a free 7-day challenge, and some choose to add on another couple weeks onto it. But the idea is to really reset metabolic rate. You know, the story that I've sorted out is your liver is a big part of your metabolism being healthy. And many are aware of fatty liver disease, many are not, but it's still the biggest driver of how well your body burns fuel. And when it's working well, you know, your health and your weight are just automatic. You probably know someone somewhere who just eats what they want to, more or less well, and their weight is fine, their health is good, their energy is steady. Well, that's normal. That's how it's supposed to go. So if those things don't all sync up properly for you, your body is not managing fuel properly. And the cool thing is that can be fixed. Your liver is super resilient, and when it gets the right situations, it can heal itself. Okay. I've got Facebook here in front of me. I'm going to take a peek at some comments here. This one's further away, so I can see that one just fine, even better without my glasses. Jillian, I usually do a strict low-carb ketogenic diet for glucose stabilization for type 1 diabetes. I am doing the 7-day challenge as part of Metabolism Reset, and I am finding, this is a ways away from me, finding the adjustment in terms of synthetic insulin dosage difficult. Any tips? Yeah, Jillian, so this is a big change for you. And this is something that I want you to think this through. So there's your glucose in the moment, there's your A1C, and there's your long-term complications. And we assume that if your morning glucose and your A1C are better, complications are lower. We don't always know that. And I've honestly not done a lot of research on ketogenic diets and long-term risks for diabetes, but I'd love to see some good data showing that there are fewer adverse outcomes. I'd love to see some long-term studies showing that there was less heart attacks, there was other issues like that. It's very common we'll see things that improve glucose but don't improve outcomes or worsen outcomes. So that's a concern that I would have. In terms of how you're converting right now, that does take working with your doctor and making any appropriate adjustments. In terms of units of insulin and grams of carb and grams of resistant starch, so consider each gram of resistant starch to be about 2 grams of carbohydrate, and grams of carbohydrate being relevant. Those things can change insulin requirements. The other thought, though, is that when your total food intake is so much lower, that all tends to be different. So it really is just watching your numbers more closely. I don't know if you use a CGM, a continuous glucose meter, or not, but that can be really useful for a time like right now. So hopefully that was of some use. Kimberly again, I have hyperthyroidism. Is this a good reset for that? Hey Kimberly, so I'd love to hear more details from you. This reset would not change hyperthyroidism. It's not even made for thyroid disease. Many people who have hypothyroidism and are on ongoing treatment, they often need less treatment. And I really encourage them to check their scores afterward. Now, if you have hyperthyroidism, that means typically one of 3 things. It means you've got Graves' disease, or you've got toxic nodular goiter, or you're over-medicated. People don't usually define the last one. They usually don't call that hyperthyroidism, even though it is. So you probably have Graves'. That's the most common of those 2. Now, you should be on some version of treatment. The integrative health doctors can do a really good job treating Graves' with natural medicines, but you want it treated somehow. It can't be untreated, okay? So promise me you won't go and let it be untreated, because it's not safe. If you want to give more feedback on what you're doing now and what's happening, I'd love to see that. Okay, yeah, I'll keep an eye out. Hey, Janet's here from the UK. How does low iron affect the thyroid? Okay, so there's just space. So low iron, yeah, great question. Lots of ways. So one of the most dramatic ones is that the symptoms of iron being below ideal really mimic a lot of the symptoms of low thyroid function. So if your iron's not dialed in, it's really common where someone will say, yeah, I'm tired, I'm hypothyroid, and they go on thyroid treatment and they do better, but not all the way. And they keep trying to get their treatment perfect, but it never brings it all the way home for them. And the iron was holding them back for parts of it. So it can cause symptoms that seem like thyroid disease, but there are also some ways in which the presence of iron is important for your body to use thyroid hormones. Now, another big factor is people that have autoimmune thyroid disease, somewhere around a third of them, 30 to 40%, have a condition that makes them not able to absorb iron very effectively. It's called atrophic autoimmune gastritis, and it's the most common thing you don't hear about. But when you have it, you take iron till you're blue in the face or eat all the liver in town, and your iron scores don't go up. It does take IV iron for people when they have atrophic gastritis, and when their iron gets better, it's life-changing. It's like such a big deal. So just know that that's a really common combination for people, and it's often not diagnosed. Okay, what else we got up here? Lots of good comments already. Ramona, my recent labs, how does this look? TSH, it looks like that's 0.27. Okay, I'm seeing the rest. T4, T3. I feel well, ready for a reset. Have all my shakes. Need your vitamins. It does take me 10,000 IU of vitamin D to hold me at 64. Hey Ramona, yeah. So thanks for reaching out. Happy to give you some detailed feedback. I just wrote a really big piece on vitamin D, Ramona, and I think it's coming out like tomorrow, or like I think it might hit the blog tonight. So if you're getting our emails, you'll get that real quick, but it'll be on the blog by tomorrow. And I wouldn't encourage you to be at 64 nanograms per mil for your vitamin D. So there's nanomoles per liter and there's nanograms per mil. And I see a lot of ways in which they get juxtaposed. So if you're talking about nanomoles per liter, 64 is about the low end, a little below where you'd want to be. But if you're talking about nanograms per mil, that's a little bit too high. So in the post that's about to come out, I went through all the evidence, and vitamin D is relevant to your thyroid health, to your overall health and longevity, and to your risk of catching infections, and possibly your risk of getting complications from infections. So we're talking about COVID here, obviously. And in all those ways, nanograms per mil, we're thinking about somewhere like 30 to 50 for being the sweet spot. If we go to nanomoles per liter, we're talking about like 75 to 125. But in any of those cases, 64 is too high or too low. So I wouldn't target that. What you're describing about your dosage, I think you're talking about nanograms per mil. And there are many that have encouraged you to be in the 60s. But honestly, that's just not current data. So yeah, a huge, massive vitamin D post coming out all about your skin types, your body composition, your latitudes, how all these things play into it, what your best levels are, why are they your best levels. So yeah, I put a massive amount of work getting that updated, and please enjoy that. Now, in terms of your thyroid levels, I don't know if you're on treatment, on thyroid treatment. You're either over-medicated or you're not treated for hyperthyroidism, but your TSH is too low, it's 0.27. Now, a lot of doctors try to dose people based upon their T4, their T3, and that may be what's happening in your case. Your T3 is kind of high normal, but the first thing that happens when you get too much thyroid is your TSH goes low, and that happens long before your T3 ever goes high. So you're getting too much, and a couple thoughts, it's a risk factor. It's a risk for cardiac damage, for brain damage, and for bone damage, and for early death overall. Now, some people only feel okay when their TSH is pushed low. That's a real phenomena, and it's not different regardless of what kind of thyroid treatment someone is on, whether it's T4 or compounded or natural thyroid, it's all the same thing. When your TSH is low, your body is lacking something that it needs for a lot of reasons. We use TSH to, believe it or not, to break down fat cells. So when TSH is too low, you can't break down stored fat effectively. Also, you can't repair the blood vessels in the body, which is why the other side effects come in. So they're all risks for harm, and that happens before the T3 gets high. So yeah, just know that you would want your thyroid dose lowered to let your TSH go higher. The healthiest people, when you look at people that have no thyroid disease and no thyroid-like complications, they don't have the highest T3 levels. They've got a big range of T3 levels. Some are low, some are moderate, some are high. There's a lot of normal fluctuation, but they all have low normal TSH, like about 0.5 to 1.5, but they don't have TSH below range. So you wouldn't want it to be quite that far down. So yeah, thank you for reaching out, and I was glad to be able to give you some feedback on those things. Oh boy, lots of cool stuff coming in here from both Facebook and Instagram. I'm on both. Let me see if I can follow up with some of those that I've already connected with a little bit. Kim, I can tell I need my meds increased, but haven't been able to get to the doc with this coronavirus going on, was losing a lot of hair on this med. Okay, so yeah, so Kim, with our care, we do integrative health is my clinic, and there's 5 really cool, brilliant doctors that take care of things. I oversee that. We train together. We do patient case reviews every week. Like I'll be with them tomorrow morning. We're doing case reviews. But yeah, they've got my stuff down at least as well as I do, if not better. And we are doing home testing for thyroid levels because, Kim, you're not the only one in this boat in which you don't want to go to a lab, you don't want to go out, I don't blame you, but you're due to check your thyroid. So you can do that from home right now. You can get a kit sent to you, you poke your finger, you get a drop of blood on some paper, you mail it in. This is not new technology, but it's new at its current level of accuracy. So we've worked with a lab and we've done some analysis on the findings with this lab for the last couple months, and we've got meaningful, accurate ways you can test at home. So, and having said that, I've heard many people who have gone to draw stations. I don't know what it's like exactly in your area, but many in the Arizona area, and they've said it's a very comfortable experience, that they're the only person there. they're waiting in their car, they're called to go in, everything is completely sterilized and wiped down. So I wouldn't delay your thyroid testing. Now, in general, Kim, being hyperthyroid is dangerous. I mentioned that before in regards to Ramona's comments, but this is also a known factor that can make you more at risk for complications from COVID-19. So one of the first death, I think it was in Bali, was a 52-year-old woman who was hyperthyroid. And it was one of the surprising deaths from COVID. And so that's known to be a risk factor for complications. So we hear about the idea of cytokines and cytokine storm. Cytokines are inflammatory molecules that our bodies generate. And one of the biggest drivers of cytokines is an excess of thyroid hormones. And there's a subtype called chemokines. And most hyperthyroid symptoms are driven by chemokines. So you don't want to be hyperthyroid ever, and you really don't want to be hyperthyroid now. So one big reason for that. So yeah. Okay. Lots of other really good questions here. Barb, I'm not diabetic, but I'm wondering if you're familiar with the glycomark test as an alternative or used in conjugation to A1C, tested out by Quest and LabCorp. Yeah, I am familiar with it, Barb Seymour. Yeah, and not diabetic. You know, we think about tests as far as ruling things in and ruling things out. And there are times in which someone may have some pre-diabetic tendencies that you wouldn't see by morning fasting glucose and A1C that the glycomark could catch. But so many people have early signs of diabetes. You know, it's often rather straightforward when it is there. So it's available, but yeah, other numbers are also still important and still meaningful. Oh, Al's giving me some input here. Next challenge starts May 4th, if I understand right. Thank you so much, Al. You're more on top of the date than I was there. So thanks for getting my back, buddy. I was talking to Kim a bit about the challenge, and yeah, Kim, so Al updated me, and it's May 4th. Yeah, Al, I've gone by Al in some of my workplaces when I was earlier in life. That was a short for Alan that I've heard, so it's a name that I always notice. Denise, I do an infrared sauna 3 to 5 times a week, and I think it's really disrupting my adrenals. Any ideas that can help? Hey, Denise, so yeah, the only negative about saunas can be just the amount of fluid loss. There is a certain amount of electrolyte that your body does give up while you're in the sauna. And dry saunas, they are nice things for detox, but yeah, you will lose fluids and electrolytes. So you may just do these a bit shorter, do the sauna not as long, not as frequent, and you should do okay with that. But if there were issues, it would be mostly tied to the electrolytes, and that'll be the frequency and the duration. I wouldn't try to like push hard to radically raise electrolytes per se. You know, consume good amounts of produce and fruits and vegetables, normal amounts of dietary sodium. But if you are just being wiped out otherwise, you may want to just go slower in terms of how long you're in the sauna and how frequently that you do it. So yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to follow questions again. Kim, no, I don't. Who did you say I can contact for help and to get a test mailed to me? Kim, I'm going to give myself some notes. I will have my team help you out, give you some specific guidance. So be the light 24/7. I love that, Kim. That's really clever. And I will have the team connect and help you out. And yeah, let's get you squared away, gal. You can't be hyperthyroid, especially not now, because it's a risk. Okay. I saw Kieran's note about the phone and the cameras getting goofed up. So I've got the big, massive camera over here. And yeah, I'll set it up differently for a future one. Angela, can perimenopause change me from hypothyroidism to Hashimoto's? Angela, I'm really glad you asked that question. So from hypothyroidism to Hashimoto's. So which one does someone have? Do you have either one? Do you have both of those? You know, what's going on? So what's the difference between hypothyroidism and Hashimoto's? How do you know if you've got one or the other? Well, so Hashimoto's is the immune disease, the autoimmune disease that causes the body to attack the thyroid. And if there's not a clear reason for thyroid disease, we assume it's Hashimoto's. Now, many that have Hashimoto's do not have positive thyroid antibodies. There's two main thyroid antibodies that we measure. That's the thyroid, I'm sorry, the antithyroid globulin and antithyroid peroxidase. The third one, which can also be relevant, but is not as commonly measured, is the thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin. That's one I started to say, but it wasn't the right time for it. So you've got TSI for the third one, you've got anti-TG and anti-TPO. Now, Angela, you may have been tested before and those might have been negative, and someone might have said you don't have Hashimoto's. Now, truth be told, many people with Hashimoto's don't have positive antibodies at a given point in time, and many don't have positive antibodies ever. So I'm guessing what happened, Angela, is that you were tested before, you didn't have antibodies, and in a future test you did have antibodies. So the antibodies don't rule out. So the absence of antibodies don't mean that you don't have Hashimoto's, but the presence of antibodies does confirm that you do, okay? So I'm guessing that's what happened, and that's rather common. And many people that have Hashimoto's never